Hello, and welcome to Designing for Delight. My name is Stephanie Howe, and I'm excited to just share how we can make school awesome for your students, but also for you as an educator. And so, what I would love for you to do is to join our space. So, right here, you're able to join this code, but there's also a link into a Pear Deck where you're able to interact with the session as well. So make sure you join that session. And then on this first page, I would love for you to just type your name and hit join. If you are not on the Pear Deck, you can also just go to schoolai.com. And once you're here, there's a space code up at the top. You can click on that and type in this 8-digit code, AWSMFBK8. And once you're there, I just want you to take a moment and join the space. And I just kind of want you to think about how we're designing for delight. So again, just pause the video, think about how we're designing for delight, and what maybe would make you actually look forward to coming to school. So what is it that it sparks your joy? What is it that gets you excited about teaching? What is it as a student that made you want to go and was so excited about learning as well? So again, just take a few minutes, pause the video, and just kind of reflect for a moment on designing for delight and what that actually looks like and how we can actually make that happen. Once you're ready, then we're going to go ahead and start the session. So again, hi, I'm Stephanie Howe, and I am a community coach at School AI. In the second grade, I really did not like school. I didn't like it because I really struggled with school. I really didn't uh, comprehend some of the information that was presented to me. My learning was very passive, and I was also kind of not able to learn in a way that I really wanted to. So I would just kind of like to hear and think about your schooling. How did you feel? Did you enjoy going to school? If so, click yes. If you didn't, let us know by clicking no. So again, in the second grade, I was diagnosed with a learning disability, and I had a lot of different self-beliefs that just kind of hindered how I felt about school and how I felt about education. And I just, again, didn't have that excitement and spark like so many of my other classmates did. And it wasn't until that I got into college where I started to learn that learning could be exciting, learning could be really fun, and it could also support, and make things exciting. And it was because of the way that I was learning, I think. I went to Western Governors University, and the learning was a little bit different than it was when I was in the second grade in this picture. So, again, I just want you to kind of think back. Was school awesome for you? Yes or no? Were you excited and delighted in going to school? Yes or no? But again, for me, my experience was definitely a no. I did not enjoy school. There were moments that were awesome, but for the most part, overall, it just was not a great experience for me. So now what I want you to do is I just want you to kind of think for a moment of when school felt awesome. What happened, right? And here's two examples that is right here on this piece of paper where I really kind of want you to think through and kind of think what was awesome, what wasn't awesome. So maybe it was when you went on a field trip somewhere. So maybe you went on a field trip to the zoo or somewhere. This one time in fifth grade, I won Student of the Month, and I got to go to lunch with the principal, and it was at McDonald's. That was a pretty awesome day, right? And I still remember it today. And so I just want you to kind of take a moment and again, just think about it. And I want you to kind of just think for just a few seconds, what is it that made school awesome? What was it that got you excited and ready to learn, right? And so maybe it's that trip, or maybe it's winning some type of reward, or maybe it's a project that I did in sixth grade where I was able to have $1 million and I could spend it on whatever I wanted. Maybe it was hanging out with your friends at lunch. So again, feel free to pause the video, jot some thoughts down, and really kind of consider, when did school feel awesome and what happened in those moments? But then I also want you to come in and I kind of want you to just reflect for a moment And think about times where maybe school didn't feel awesome. And again, you're going to use that same school AI space to really reflect on these moments. And when you think about those moments where school didn't feel awesome, what happened? I remember having to do homework every single night. And I didn't understand the concept, and my mom maybe didn't understand the strategies that the teachers taught me. So we fought a lot at home and worked on this homework every single night. Maybe it was having observations done or, tests or anything like that. Maybe you're thinking as a teacher as well, right? Maybe it was those beliefs that we had in ourselves where maybe we didn't think we could do something, right? Or we felt like we couldn't ask because we would be that student that just looked a little silly. So again, I kind of want you to just pause a moment and think about those awesome moments, but also think about those moments that just are not so awesome and what those look like for you as a student or even as a teacher. And think about students as well, right? And so, as you kind of think through those moments, what I would like you to do is kind of take some of those thoughts and ideas, and I want you to write your response. So, now I just want you to kind of summarize. So, you were in that school AI space, kind of thinking through with Dot what was awesome and what was not awesome, what made school delightful and what made it not so delightful. And after that, I just want you to kind of take a pause and just kind of summarize. Okay, I want you to think about different things that kind of maybe took place as you were doing this activity and how you were kind of going through and considering um, different things within students and within the classroom. I also just kind of want to point out as well, what do you kind of maybe notice, right? And what do you notice? I know this is a virtual recorded session, but I want you to really think about like, what did you notice? And typically what I see, so I'm going to kind of share what I normally see when I do this activity live, is most people, projects are awesome, right? It's when we're active in our learning. Friends are a huge part. When a teacher believed in us, and we see like all of these different patterns kind of flowing through. Not awesome is kind of those self beliefs that we might have had, or maybe some of those like executive functioning skills that got in the way, or maybe we had a teacher that we didn't quite get along with or enjoy. And so, again, I just want you to kind of jot down like, what do you notice that from your responses, from kind of what I've shared, what do you notice about school and what makes it awesome? Right. And so, with that, I want us to just kind of think about ways that we are able to design with delight. So, how can we design with delight in supporting every single learner? So, one way that I like to do this is through vocabulary practice. And so you can kind of see here, this is kind of what we're going to get our students to be doing. It's like our visual. But before I used to use flashcards, just kind of that remote practice, where now I can have students use AI to create vocabulary visuals to excite them and help them learn vocabulary. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go into my School AI account. And if you want to, you can follow along over on the side, or you can go to schoolai.com and hit sign in. Once you're signed in, I am over in 2.0. And the reason I'm in 2.0 is because now with 2.0, there's an image generator that we can use to support vocabulary. So if your screen looks like this, you're just going to come up here to the top and click Unlock 2.0 Beta if you're following along. Again, feel free to pause the video and try it out. Like you can watch and then you can do, or you can follow along with me. Once we go into 2.0 Beta, we can come in here and we're able to create a space. And we're going to create a student learning space for this activity. And with this activity, I can tell Dot, this is Dot right here, that I want to create a vocabulary activity where my students are going to be creating visuals to support their learning and to support their ideas. You're able to come in and you can chat and use the speak to text to kind of explain the activity that you want to create. You can also go through these step-by-step directions in order to create your student learning experience to go from flashcards to an interactive activity. Hey Dot, I want to create a vocabulary activity where my students are learning about the word resilience. And what I want them to do is I want them to create using descriptive language about resilience. And I want them to be able to kind of prompt, and then it will create an image based on their definition, based on what they explain of that word resilience. I hit enter, and Dot's probably going to come back and ask me a few more questions about this activity. Maybe you wanted to do more than just one word, right? I just picked one word for this activity, but maybe you want to do something else, right? So he goes, okay, that sounds awesome. Is this for your fifth grade ELA class? I can say, yes, it is, or maybe I teach a different grade level or different subject. And so I'm going to say, yes, it is for my fifth grade ELA class. And I want the AI space to act as a vocabulary expert. And you can kind of see here, there's help with kind of the students to see how I want that role to be played out. After that, we're going into the task and the instructions. And so I've already kind of set it out front with my brain dump. And now what I'm able to do is I'm able to come in here and I'm able to decide how I want this to kind of look. So they're going to write a descriptive paragraph about resilience. I could do that. I can have them create a short story. I could describe a time where they showed resilience, list that. So which task do I really want students to do? I want them to describe a time. I want to make this a connection. I could also make this a choice, right? I could also kind of see kind of, okay, what is it that we have upcoming in our learning, why they need to know the word resilience. So now I'm able to come in and I can say, okay, which one do I really like? I really like where they have to think of a time and they have to describe, right, how they felt with that time of resilience. So again, we're just going through these steps to make sure that our learning goals are all clear and ready to go to support our students with learning this vocabulary activity. Again, you could do more than one words. There is also in the power-ups, we'll kind of get to those, but there is a flashcard one as well. So again, I kind of want to move away from that flashcard, that basic recall, and get my students to higher levels of thinking. And so now it's ready for us to think about, right, kind of which ones do we maybe want to have within our space? What are the roles? So yeah, I for sure want my images to be appropriate and positive. Let's see here. I want AI should help revise, not write for the students. I want the image generation, right, is limited one try per student. I want them to be able to try multiple times. This is a practice activity, but maybe it wasn't. You can decide that. Maybe I wanted to stay at a fifth grade level. And so again, as I'm going through these steps, I'm customizing my space so it's right directly aligned to the learning outcomes that I want. Now I want to be able to track my students. So I want to be able to track the sensory details. I want them to be able to see how engaged my students are. I want to be able to see, how engaged my students are with that image that they did create. And now we're ready to build the space. So again, when you're creating the space, you're just going through these steps in order to decide what you want this space to look like. Once you have that space, you can decide if you want one word or if you want to follow up on multiple words. This could be a great bell ringer activity, exit ticket, middle of the lesson activity, whatever you need this to maybe fit in could be a great way. And so as it's creating this space, we're going to see right here these different activities that my students are going to engage in. So you can see here, this activity might take 20 to 30 minutes. So maybe it's a station rotation activity. Maybe I didn't want it to take that long. I could come in and revise with Dot or come in here and change any of the activities. But based on my conversation with Dot, it was able to come in and create my lesson outcomes and objectives based on my conversation with Dot. So you'll see here, we're going to submit one sentence definition of resilience first, that basic recall first. We're bringing my students up. Then we're going to provide maybe a sensory detail. Then that my students are going to come in and they're going to create their paragraph. After that, my students are going to update their paragraph, and then it's going to generate an image. And so I can see here that there are also power-ups. And so I can have my students have this image generator power-up. For this one activity, maybe I want them to be typing in a document or have their draft saved into a document. I can add a power up with that activity where my students are having maybe the document generator. Maybe there's a doodle board. Maybe they're drawing it out. And then once I'm all set, I can hit publish and I'm able to publish that space. And my students are able to engage in this activity where they're really going to learn and practice and engage and learn the word resilience at a higher level than just basic recall of flashcards. My students are able to come in and they're going to recall first, right? In your own words, what does resilience mean? And they're going to recall first based on kind of their information. But then DOT is going to adapt, and it's also going to support my students with their thinking along the way. So if student says, I don't know, DOT can come in and help scaffold, maybe provide additional examples. If I do know the definition, just like here, DOT's going to really help me, right? I'm ready to move on to that next step of the agenda. And as a teacher, you're able to go in and use mission controls. And I can see here's my session. And I'm able to come in to my session and hit view. And I can see how my students are doing. I can see what students and what step they're on. I can see that this student has gotten a 4. 4 is the highest level. It's out of mastery-based grading. So I can see that they're truly understanding this concept. I can also sort and filter by different steps, by different mastery level. And this allows me to pull small group, use this data in real time. I can also see, right, how my students are doing with those quick learning insights. So this can be a great way to kind of get another way for my students to really think about the word resilience in a fun activity where they're going to be able to come in and they are going to be able to chat with DOT. And again, it's going to support their learning, support how my students are doing in that moment as they're working through this activity. So again, just a way that we're able to support our students is using these spaces. And again, it's kind of helping create those moments for our students so that way they're able to reflect on their learning and we can kind of see how my students are doing. Right here, DOT is working on a power up. So now it's helping us with writing tips to create our moment of resilience for our students. So I'm going to go ahead and just kind of show you what it might look like as we get to that image generator, right? And again, this can just be a great way to support your students as they're working through this activity. And up here, you'll notice that there is an agenda as well, where I can see how my students are doing and they can see where they're at in this agenda step. And this again allows me to be able to say, okay, I need to pull a small group for students that are step number 1, because they should be by step number 2 or 3 by now, right? And so again, I'm really able to support my students, really able to see how they're doing, and really able to step in if I need to step in and assist with that, right? And so again, it can just be really helpful for my students to take this to a deeper level. They're getting immediate feedback right from DOT. And now DOT's working on another power up. It looks like it's taking my writing and now adding it into a document. So if my students needed to export this to a Google Doc, Microsoft Word, or wherever, they're able to do so. So again, great for scaffolding, great for working through any type of ideas that I might need to work through. And then I can, again, I'm making my paragraph stronger and stronger by the feedback that DOT is providing me every single time. And DOT's able to take my paragraph and rewrite it for me. Okay. And so now we can see, okay, right, we're ready for to move on. So I can just say, okay, my paragraph is done based on all of those suggestions and feedback that DOT provided me. And so now I'm going on to the next step, step number 4, where now I might check my census, right, and kind of see how we're doing with this to maybe help us move on and help my students. Again, they're building those skills. So let me go ahead and add my 1-word sentence right here. And then as students go through, now DOT is powering up again. And again, now we're at step number 5, where it says it's going to generate that image. And students are going to be able to see how their work is being done with that immediate feedback. And this can be great with the document generator, But also right here, look at that resilience, right? And they can decide, is this what I was picturing or was it not what I was picturing? And what I love about using these experiences for our students is it has a lot of metacognition, and it also has a lot of um, different reflection options as well, right? It says, if you want to make a quick change to the image, what would it be? So I'm able to provide that feedback right in real time to show that, hey, I am reflecting on my learning, which we know is a great strategy for students to take their learning to a deeper level and to support them with ownership with their learning as well. So again, that is just a fun activity. Again, there's mission control for me to be able to see how my students are doing in that real time as they're working towards their learning and as they're kind of also gathering their information and their data to be able to make those additional steps and to make those additional moves. So again, that can be just one great way that we can support students, but you can create a ton of other spaces that also support students as well. And so you'll see here that maybe instead of having students get feedback from you that is typically later, right? They could have immediate feedback. And what I love about this activity is this is a writing activity, and it's called "Can You Beat the Computer?" And I did this with my 7th grade class. I'm in Ohio. And so what happens in Ohio is our end of year test, our Ohio State test, is graded by a computer. And this can be really, really scary for a lot of students, right? Like, oh, a human's actually not scoring your writing. And so with this activity, what we did is we had our students input their pre-test writing into the computer. And I do also just want to kind of show you my prompt, and this is kind of editable because there are multiple different ways that you might need to use this prompt. So you can see here, I was like, hey Dot, here's a writing prompt. And I just took the writing prompt from a practice past OST test that my students needed to take. And I inserted that writing prompt right here. You could also insert a PDF or a document of that prompt if you have it downloaded, and you could just say, see attached PDF. So if I was in here, I would go to create a space again, and I would do my student learning right here. And again, I would just kind of copy all of this right here. And again, you can customize it to make sure that it fits for your classroom. But basically, I would write and insert my prompt here. You could attach by uploading a file or adding in your standards. That could be additional support as well. So maybe I had a resource that was saved on my device, or maybe I had a resource that was saved in my Google Drive. I could add that in. Maybe you had a rubric. You could change my scoring rubric to whatever scoring rubric you have. And so I can come in here, create, I can have my article 1, article 2. I could also attach those articles and maybe just provide what names of each article is. And then once I'm ready, Dot's going to help me create this learning activity for my students. And so again, with Beat the Computer, students came in and they entered in their pretest. So they did not have any feedback from that pretest, and it gave them a score. Most of my students were scoring between 2, 3, or maybe even like a 1. Okay, so very low scores. And what we did is I took that feedback. So again, we kind of used this mission control data to help us determine those next steps. We were able to see, based on how my students were doing towards mastery, how they were doing in each of the progress of those steps and their level of mastery, and those quick insights as well. And based on all of that information, what we were able to do is we were able to create small groups. We were able to differentiate. We were able to have exemplar writing problems where students could compare and contrast. Why did this get a 9? Why did this get a 10, right? They were looking, they had conversations with each other. My students' motivation was extremely high in this activity. And one thing that I like to do is I had a space for my students, but I also came over here to my space. And this is Dot right here. And Dot allows me to problem solve. You can see here, we can create differentiated quizzes. We can maybe create a behavior reward system. We can have a lesson plan. We can also have a mind map. There's a lot of different activities that we're able to create with Dot. So maybe I'm working on this writing activity, right? And I can say like my students, and again, I like to use this voice right here just so you can hear my thoughts out loud. My students are really struggling with transition words in their writing. We are scoring pretty low, so I'd love some ideas and tips on teaching this idea of transition words to make their paragraphs flow a lot smoother. I also want to explain why this is relevant to them and why they might need to do this. So again, I just talked to Dot and I explained my problem. And so again, I can be using that pre-test data that's coming in from that mission control right here. And I'm able to say, okay, Dot, help me with this, right? I see that my students are really struggling with this activity. And you can see here that Dot is helping us brainstorm some activities to support this part of the writing process. And so in between that activity, I'm going to go ahead and create an anchor chart for this activity. You can see down here, Dot was suggesting different activities to support my students and to support my teaching. And so again, my space is more for teachers. We're creating a space is more for my students. So as I'm looking through creating those lesson plans, maybe for the next 2 weeks of my teaching, I'm going over different parts that my students are struggling with. I could also upload a spreadsheet or some type of information and have it organize it into multiple small groups to support and make my learning exciting and accessible for my students. I can come in and maybe now I'm like, oh, let's create a worksheet, right? So my students can practice it. I can have additional practice for different activities. I could upload my curriculum and ask it to help me differentiate based on what I might need, or maybe I need something else, right? And so again, here's that activity. I'm able to export this into another place. And so now that I've got this worksheet being created, I could also say, oh, make the answer keys on a whole nother document. I don't want to be able to have that in the same way, right? And so here I can say, want me to add supports, right? I can say, yes, make supports. Maybe I want to create multiple formative assessment check-ins for my students throughout this lesson. I'm able to brainstorm all of that with Dot. So the 2 weeks are done, right? And my students have done different practice based on what I was able to have created within Dot. And my students then are able to now try to beat the computer. So I relaunch the space, and what happens now is I use the same article, I use the same rubric, I use the same writing prompts, because again, I want to see, did their tests grow from that pre to that post test? My students enter in their revisions based on that 2 week of learning and activities that we did to strengthen their writing. By the end of this unit, most of my students were scoring 8s, 9s, and 10s on their final writing piece. And that transferred over to the Ohio State test, which was really exciting to see that all of their hard work, all of their excitement, all of their motivation that we did with this activity by using data, by using spaces, by using Dot to help me differentiate my lesson plan to support my students with that pre-test that where we were scoring so low was actually really exciting to see my students' scores go up by the end of their learning. So again, that's one way that you're able to also make school a little bit more exciting and a little bit more delightful is by really providing students that pre-test, sharing those scores with them and using it as like a can we beat this type of gamification way. And then really taking that data, having conversations with Dot about how I can support my students' learning using all of the different suggestions down here. Maybe I need to translate this worksheet into Spanish. There's all of these power-ups to also support me as well. And I can really go in and I'm able to differentiate and support my students with whatever is needed in order to really make sure that my students are really enjoying their learning, right? And so we know based on some of those activities and conversations that we had earlier, we were talking about how school is fun because we're able to do different things in order to make it exciting, in order to engage our students, right? From moving from passive learners to active learners. Our students are able to really engage in their learning, and they're able to do this quickly by having some of those fun interactive spaces for our students. And so, again, you can kind of see some different ways that maybe I've used different spaces just to move from basic recall and from passive learning to getting my students to interact, to getting my students to reflect on their learning, to getting my students really excited to understand a topic. You can create quick pre-assessments, post-assessments, formative assessments. You can also do exit tickets, entrance tickets. All of those great things can really be done to support students' learning. And so I would love to just kind of hear too, like, what are you thinking? How are you thinking that we can make school awesome for every single student? What is it that we're able to do to ensure that every single student, right, is getting whatever they need out of learning? How do we move from passive to active learners? And so maybe we think about that instant feedback, right? That can be a great way to get students excited. Instead of waiting 2 weeks for my essay to be graded, having immediate feedback that I can act on, that I can think through, that I can reflect on is a great way to support our students. All right, lesson planning. How can we make our lesson plannings more delightful, right? How can we add some more interaction or differentiation to really support our students? Those data summaries. How can I upload data that I'm just like, I don't have time to look at? Well, we can use Dot to help us look through those data summaries as well. There's also family communication. So just like we were brainstorming with Dot on transitions, maybe I come in here and I can ask Dot, let's go back to that conversation. Over here is our history where we can go back to that activity. And I could say, hey, Dot, create a parent newsletter so my parents can help at home with transition words and how they can just kind of naturally have this in their conversations at dinner. Dot can help me create so parents can also help and support at home with their child's learning as well. There's also research, right? We can do different activities with research where we have students join in a space. And I like to use an activity, it's called Research on the Run. And I usually had an article where my students had to learn about sea turtles. And they would join this space where they would actually research, organize their thoughts and activities in this space. And it was a fun activity because what Research on the Run does is you have one student who is at the computer in the School AI space researching all about whatever the topic is. For example, this space is all about sea turtles where they could ask questions and record their data. But you've also got a runner. This student is kind of playing telephone. This student's running in between you and it's running in between the scribe. So you've got your researcher who's researching away in the School AI space, a runner who's running back and forth, delivering and communicating the information. And then the last job is a scribe, where this student has a poster, piece of paper, or a pen, or a marker, and they're jotting down what they're learning about sea turtles. Students are working together in a collaborative group to understand information. And the group with the most accurate and most facts is the winner by the end of the game. So this is a great way for students to build prior knowledge in a quick 7 to 10 minute activity. And they're able to really gain that understanding and strong foundation of what they're about to learn in the upcoming unit that they are about to take place. You can also come up with assessment questions, right? Where I'm able to make it so it's higher level thinking and getting my students to really problem solve through instead of, again, just that basic recall. And so now I want you to think about your next steps in implementation. So I want you to kind of think, I'm trying to solve in my classroom. Are you trying to engage with formative assessment, maybe exit tickets or entrance tickets? Well, then start there. Maybe you have kind of thinking about how you can move to more project-based learning and you're like, oh, maybe I can use my space Dot to really help me think through each of these steps. Or maybe I want to focus on differentiation. Think about that problem that you want to solve within your classroom. Then I want you to design a lesson or plan showing how you would maybe use School AI to address the challenge. Focus on practical, actionable ideas that really can support your students. Then I want you to present your plan. Share your ideas on social media, or share them with me. I would love to see them. I can't wait to, kind of see what you've created and what you've designed within that space. So I want to just kind of walk through what I'm asking you to do with just another example, right? You already saw some ways of using vocabulary. We've talked about writing. We also talked about research with research on the run. And so now let's dive into maybe what this might look like. So I wanted to pick a challenge. I really wanted to start using the 5E model, right? And I really wanted to start using the 5E model so I could start to personalize my students' learning. And so you can see here that I have different activities that I was able to use within my lesson. So what I was able to do is I was able to go into, let's wait for it to load. There we go. I was able to go into, let's go to schoolai.com. And once I was here, I was able to go into the Discover library. So this is the Discover. This is where you can see other educators' space designs and ideas. And there's a really good 5E lesson planner that my friend Cheska has made. So let's see if we can search for this. I might need to go into the teacher spaces. So I'm going to search 5E. So you can type what you're about to start teaching. And then I'm able to launch this lesson. From here, I'm able to share with Dot what I'm about to start teaching. So for this example, I was working on what makes a character change. And this space really helped me design this activity where I was able to engage, explore, explain, elaborate, and evaluate to support my students' learning. And so again, because I'm able to upload my curriculum resources and standards, I was able to create this pretty strong lesson plan where first my students engage and they go in and they're able to really think about a story that they know from a book, movie, or TV show. Then they think about the twists. What is the twist in the plot? After that, students explore and they compare a passage 1 to compare passage 2. So they really start to compare and contrast. And that helped me create an article for that compare and contrast plan. Then there was a classroom discussion on the findings. So after my students came in, we then had a discussion on how my students did. I was able to have a classroom chat about what they thought and what they thought about the theme, what they thought about the character changes within the story. Then they created a comic strip where they had to think about each of the different events over time. And then they got to pick one of these activities from a choice board to dive deeper into their learning. And again, I was able to create this interactive, exciting lesson using this teacher space that Cheska made of going through the 5Es, brainstorming with Dot, telling Dot, no, I don't like that. Let's redo this. Let's do this instead. And then creating that and copying it, pasting it over onto this document that I could share with students. And you also see I had the student interaction space as well, where my students can join and they're able to really think through these two different stories. So there's passage 1 and passage 2 on how this character changed from passage 1 to passage 2. So again, think about what you want to create. What is the problem that you want to overcome within your classroom? What gets you excited? What plan can you make? So feel free to spend as much time as you would like, but I would love for you to kind of think about your problem, create your plan. You can use this to brainstorm or a document or Dot. And then I would love for you to share. So if you have a link to a resource, you can just use the text box and then type or paste in that URL. And I would love to see what you created and share it on social media as well. We would love to see kind of what is it that you thought of. Maybe it's just a space. Maybe it's just the space that you created. Maybe you brainstorm with Dot something more intense like this that you're excited to use for an upcoming unit or activity with your students. We cannot wait to see what you design at that moment. And then lastly, this is a mic drop moment. What is one idea that you are leaving with today? So we would love for you to also kind of type in your response right here with just a reflection. What is it that you took away? Maybe it was focusing in on beating the computer. Maybe it was focusing in on research on the run. Maybe you're like, I really want to try that. Or maybe you're like, I didn't know I could brainstorm like that with Dot and have kind of a nice flow of here's my data, here's my information, here's where my students are struggling. Help me make this relevant to them, right? Think about all of the different ways and what mic drop moment you're leaving with today. And again, I would love for you to enter that in on page number 17, just so we can see what takeaways were really impactful for today. And again, I would love, 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 love to connect. So if you wouldn't mind, add your email here. What was biggest aha moment from today's session? How engaging? Did you enjoy the session? Did you like the reflective prompts, right? So again, I would love for you to complete this survey right here on designing for delight. And my name is Stephanie. So if you do have any questions, feel free to reach out. Would love to connect and support you in making schools awesome, making your classroom awesome, and getting students excited for learning and really designing for delight where you're excited, your students are excited, and I can't wait to see what you create in those lesson plans. Thanks so much for joining me.